If your drum groove sounds good, but for some reason it lacks that punch, that energy that you're looking for, it might not be the samples you're using. It might be, but it might also not be the samples. It might just be that you might be overcompressing. Let's look at different examples of how we could overcompress a sound and just ruin the vibe completely. So we got two versions of the same loop right here. We've done trainings with this loop before. I just like using it. It feels good and there's good control in it. So let's start off with the overcompressed version of it. And this is what it sounds like. And for reference, let's listen to the drums, the top drums. Now, it's only kick, top drums, and bass, right? It's simple. I've removed all the other layers so we can listen to what compression sounds like. Compression really sounds like, what it does, and how it behaves. Now, let's play the dynamic version, meaning like the less compressed, the non-over-compressed version of it. Let's compare it again. Just compression in itself makes a massive difference. We got to be careful how do we use it. We don't use compression just to add power. We use compression to be able to control the dynamic range. What does that mean? The dynamic range, simply put, is the difference between the loudest part of a sound and the quietest part of the sound. When we compress, we bring the loudest to the quietest together, closer together. So this serves multiple purposes. But let's look this example, the example that we have, let's look compression in this example and how overcompressing could ruin the drum groove versus non-overcompressing and properly compressing it. Let's move to the overcompressed version and let's see what's being done. So right here at the bottom, there's a compressor. There's a couple of things that are very important to note about compressors. We got a threshold here. This basically tells the compressor more like when the signal comes in, when the signal passes minus 24.5 dB in this case, you could set this at the level that you want. You're giving the signal to the compressor to turn on. The attack is the speed at which it turns on. Does it slowly turn on or does it quickly open up, right? Why is this important? Because if it quickly opens up, it acts right away. If it slowly opens up, it takes a while until it behaves, until it does what it's supposed to do. Keep that in mind. I'll come back to it. The ratio is the intensity at which it's going to compress. Now, I don't want to go into math, and I know a lot of people explain the math behind this. Who cares? What we want to know is the higher the ratio, the more intensely it compresses. The lower the ratio, the more lightly it compresses. So a fast attack allows us to act on the transient very quickly. What's a transient? Let me show you. If I zoom in on the sound, the transient is this loud part. If the attack is very fast, let's go back here. If this attack is very fast, which in this case is very fast, as soon as it opens up, the compressor is going to compress this loud part, reducing the dynamic range, the difference between the loud part and the quiet part. And it's going to, in this case, in this example of overcompression, it's going to compress it quite heavily. 6-to-1 ratio is a bit intense. You could get worse, of course, but it's pretty intense. There's another element I want you to pay attention to. Peak and RMS. The peak means that the compressor behaves directly on, as soon as the peak passes that signal, the minus 24.5, the compressor acts on it right away. Versus the RMS, it's a slower acting compressor. Gives room for the groove to breathe through, and then it slowly compresses the louder parts versus the quieter parts. It's a bit less intense. So in this case, we've picked a very fast attack, so we want the compressor to open up fast. We've chosen a high ratio. That means we want the compressor to compress more intensely. So fast, intense, and we want it to act directly on the peak and not take an average or open up slowly. Not open up or behave slowly, more like. So when we listen to it, listen to everything I've described. If it's really squeezing the transient heavily, we're going to hear this. And what do we listen to? You know, when I was coming up in production, I used to watch tutorials. Back then, there wasn't many tutorials and they were not all the best. And there's a lot of shitty ones, to be fair. But a lot of times I used to see compressed, non-compressed type of videos, and I never really heard the difference. Now you might say my ear wasn't trained, blah, 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 whatever. But I want to point you to like the difference between my ear and your ear. Most probably your ear is better. If you're younger, 100%. I've abused my ears, played in bands, cymbals, no earplugs. But what I'm getting at is like, it's not the quality of the eardrum that you have. Yes, it plays a role. But overall, it's more, we're listening to the same signal. How is it I could capture some elements that you're missing out on? Because I'm listening to the right thing and I know how to listen to it. When we listen to an overcompressed sound, what does that mean? Overcompressed means that the transient and the quiet part are close in signal together, which leaves little room to breathe. It feels choked up. It feels like everything's trying to fit in the same space, right? So let's listen to the drums, the top drums, and try to see if we're hearing that. You hear the top end of the sizzle of the drums. Things are just coming in a bit heavy. It sounds a bit rough. It feels like, again, it's all trying to fit in the same kind of space. Let's listen to the more dynamic version and let's see how we hear the difference. And I'll explain to you what I've done on the compression front and why it's better. Most people right now would say, oh, this version is like, it's more clean, it's more clear, we're hearing the impact a bit more, but this is less compressed. How can that be? Let me show you what that looks like. So if we look at this version of the compressor, there's a couple of things here that I'm going to talk about. First, let's talk about the compression itself, and then we'll talk about an additional tool that I'm using to help. And I want you to always walk away with I want you to walk away from my trainings with a way of thinking better, right? How can we take information, process better, and take more effective decisions? It's not tactical, it's strategic. How do we think? How do we clean up our thinking to make better decisions? And I want you to walk away from these trainings with new insight. Even if I always say it, and I'll always say it in all my trainings, even if there's one thing you walk away from that allows you to think better, not something you've learned by heart, a tactic that you turn it off, this, that, no. If you are able to think 1% better tomorrow, that ripple effect is going to be massive for you. So what have I done in this dynamics version, the non-overcompressed version? So you see the attack isn't super fast. The ratio is looser. And I've choose the RMS, which is less of an intense reaction. It's a bit smoother. So what this does is it lets some of the peaks through and it compresses it a bit slower and more mellower. When we hear the difference, way to explain it, the non-overcompressed version, like the better version, this one, sounds like it's breathing better. You hear that a lot in compression. It feels like the track's breathing better. Why? Because there is dynamics. Let me give you an example. Imagine if you're listening to a track that's slamming in your face nonstop, high energy for like 7 minutes straight. You'll get tired listening to it eventually because it's just in your face nonstop. It doesn't stop. There's no moments where the track takes a break, which is why we call a break in dance music. There's sections in the track where the drop comes in, it's intense, we're dancing, we're feeling it, there's massive low end in the club, it's hitting to our chest, and then the break comes in and the kick falls off, things feel a bit more ethereal, a bit more calm, and it shifts the energy, creates contrast, it creates a dynamic change. Why am I giving you that more of a storytelling example in a track, and how does it apply here? If you have your sounds coming in, the top of the drums and all the different things, all just slamming through, trying to fit in, and trying to capture attention, it becomes tiring to listen to. And it feels like the track is not breathing. When we lightly compressed, we capture some of the peaks and we quieten the peaks just a little bit, but still keeping the punch there. Now you might say, well, Vardy, how would I be able to achieve all those big loudness, the loudness war bullshit? Like how am I going to get to the dance floor and then play my track and it's going to be as loud as everything else? This is a great question. You're most probably thinking, and if you're not, that's okay. There's layers that we approach mixing in, which we touch on this at different stages of the production. Different stages of production first and mixing as well. The scope of today's training is not about that because it would make the video extremely long, and I want you to walk away with one thing, not 15 things that you're going to forget. We'll talk about that in another training, but what's important for now, you let your groove breathe. We let the groove breathe, and the intensity and the impact comes from the fact that you're preserving the transients. You're not over compressing your transient. Super key, super important. Now, a step further from this point on, we see that I've added a saturator. What is the saturator doing? It's thickening up the space. So while this is thickening up the space with hyper compressing and making the quiet parts very loud, so it just feels like it's smashing your face nonstop. Here, we're preserving the transient, we're preserving the impact of the hits, but we're thickening up the space a bit more in the sound by using, in this case, Saturn. It could be any saturator. Don't go and buy Fab Filter Saturn 2 right now. That's not the point. The point is not the plugin. I don't give a shit about the plugin. It's good. I use it. There's a lot of types of saturators. The idea is that we're using a saturator. Why are we using it? We're adding a bit of drive to it. It's thickening up the space. It's not adding instruments. It's not boosting the amplitude like an EQ does. It's not compressing dynamic range. It's just adding a bit more thickness to the sound. And we hear the difference very well when we turn it off. You feel every single hit, every single instrument thickens up a little bit, has a bit more presence. So not only are we not destroying the peaks with the lighter compression, we're adding a bit more juice by adding some saturator on top of it. If we turn both of them off and listen to it, you might choose to use saturation a bit differently. You might not want to use worm tape. You might experiment, but the thinking is the same. We're thickening up the space and we're not over compressing to get power. So there's other methods here too, but I want you to just stick with this. What have we learned so far? Over compressing kills transients. Over compressing kills the breath in the track and the dynamic range. At first, it might seem that there's more power, but it becomes tiring to listen to, and it actually loses the impact and the punch. Instead, use lighter compression to capture the peaks, and this ties into what I said before. There's additional trainings I'll do eventually of how to get your mix to sound. Like, what are the extra steps that we do compression-wise to be able to get to a very loud mix and preserve this? But for now, I can't teach you in like 10 minutes, 15 million things. You're going to forget everything, and that's not the point. I don't want you to walk away being confused. So step 1, don't overcompress. Step 2, lightly compress like I've described with a bit slower attack, RMS on instead of peak, and the ratio not too heavy, and then add a bit of saturation to thicken up the space a little bit and see how that works. This is going to make a massive difference for you. If you're looking for any more detailed help, we've helped hundreds of producers become professional in the past. We specialize in advanced education, not just tactical stuff. People come to us to become pro. That's the ultimate goal. And I'm here to help. I love what I do. I've been doing this for a long time. If you want to chat, you're more than welcome to book a call below. Or if you have any questions about this training, comment below so we could dive deeper and help you out. See you guys.